Hello, welcome to or welcome back to Dave's Techway, whichever way the situation may be. In today's video, we're going to be comparing the Vega 11 graphics to the new Vega 7 graphics. These are the IGPUs inside the Ryzen APUs. They've had almost 3 years to do some kind of improvements to these IGPUs. We're going to see what kind of improvements they have done, if there is any improvements done. There will be timestamps in the description below. There's also some other links down there that may interest you as well. And don't forget that all that fun YouTube stuff on your way down to that description box. Let's flip you over here. We'll go down through the components and make up each of the test beds for today's video. And I will tell you what the differences is and why I had to do it the way I did it. Alright, and for the Vega 11 test bench, we use the AMD Ryzen 5 2400G, which is 4-core, 8-thread processor. For the motherboard for the 2400G, I went with the Gigabyte B450M DS3H motherboard. For the Vega 7 graphics, we are using the AMD Ryzen 5 5600G. It is 6-core, 12-thread processor running the Vega 7 graphics. I paired that with the Gigabyte B550M DS3H motherboard. Both motherboards are the Gigabyte DS3H motherboard. Why I did use two different motherboards for this, because if you built the APU system with the 2400G when it first came out in 2018, the B550 motherboards wasn't around. And I feel that if you build an APU build back in 2018 or today, these are pretty good comparable motherboards to be pairing with the APU system. I'm trying to keep the motherboards and CPUs in the same generation, is why I did so. For the RAM, we have G-Skilled Ripjaws 5 Series 16 gig, 2 8 gig sticks, running at 3600 megahertz speed. As far as the RAM goes, they both did have 2 gigabytes of VRAM dedicated to the GPUs or the iGPUs. There was a little bit of a difference in these two. The 5600G with the B550 motherboard could run 3600 megahertz speeds. The 2400G on the B450M motherboard, it wasn't stable at 3600 megahertz, so I had to run it at 3200 megahertz speed. So there was a little bit of a difference there, but there's nothing I could do about it because the older system would not accept 3600 megahertz speed. And I don't feel if you're building an APU system today that you would buy a 3200 megahertz speed or you buy a 3600 megahertz kit and turn it back to 3200 megahertz. So I did do it at what I would expect you to run if you bought either one of these systems new or built one of these two systems. They was both running exact same silicon power 512 gig NVMe Gen 3 x 4 SSDs, and they was both hooked up to an EVGA 500 watt 80 plus bronze certified non-modular power supply. If you noticed, I didn't put these in a case. They was out of the box. They was set on the motherboard box, and that's the way I ran them. I did use a stock heat sinks on them. I'm not doing temperature testing, and I'm not saying that, this is the performance you can get out of either iGPU. I just wanted to try to keep it apples to apples, or as fair as I could, as far as the build went. So them's the parts to make up the test bed that I used in today's video. As far as the testing goes, I ran everything at 720p low. I ran Borderlands 3 built-in benchmark. I ran Heaven benchmark. Also did Apex Legends. I just went into the training grounds and played around for 15-20 minutes on each one of the systems. I didn't want the different maps or whatever to make a big impact on each of the iGPUs or, to mess with the frame rate. So I tried to keep it as fair as I could by doing this. And also in CSGO, I also played on the same map with bots to kind of eliminate and try to keep it as fair as I could between each run. So that's kind of the way I ran everything. Like I said, everything was ran at 720p low settings. And the conclusion of the video with the numbers that we're going to go over today, they was all captured by MSI Afterburner. I'm trying to keep them as apples to apples as I can, or as fair as I can, just to see what kind of performance gains we got with the Vega 7 graphics compared to the Vega 11 graphics. So that's why I decided to run the test the way I did today. Alright, we went down through the ports to make up each of the test bed for today. I went through the technology, or the way I set up for each of the tests and why I did so. So let's flip over here and we'll look at these charts and we'll see if there's been any improvement over the last 3 years with these iGPUs or the integrated graphics on these APUs. Alright guys, here we are on Borderlands 3. The 2400G is in the orange, the black is the 5600G, and that goes for all the charts that you'll be looking at today. The average frame rate went up from 48.2 with the Vega 11 up to 58.1 with the Vega 7. Minimum went up from 32.2 up to 48.8. Max went from 59.6 up to 71.6. 1% low is 12.7 and went up to 48.4. The 1/10% low is a little different here, but it shows 2400G got 7.1 compared to 6.2 on the Vega 7 graphics. Next, we have the Heaven benchmark. We went from 92.8 up to 103.1. The minimum, again, this is a little funky, but we got 0.8 on the 2400G, and the 5600G got 40.5. The max went from 166.2 up to 176.1. 1% lows went from 18.4 up to 38.6. The 1/10% low went from 0.8 up to 1.7. As far as Apex Legends go, we went from 68.9 up to 70.9. Minimum was 53.5, went up to 54.5. We have the maximum from 100.7 up to 128.1. 1% low went from 56.1 up to 56.2. 1/10% low went from 50.9 up to 53. And in CSGO, the average was 127, went up to 177.6. The minimum went from 54.5 up to 83.7. The max went from 332.1 up to 365.9. 1% low went from 66.3 up to 106.7. The 1/10% low went from 13.9 up to 24.3. I'm not very good at the percentages or figuring out what the difference is in the percentages, but you know, the Vega 7 graphics does look like they do perform quite better than what the Vega 11 graphics do. So the number culture behind them, or the way that they're pronounced, or the way you say them, you know, you figure Vega 11 would be better than Vega 7 because 11's higher number than 7. Well, that ain't always true with these APUs. If you actually look up the Vega graphics on these, the Vega 7's got less cores, or less IGPU cores, than the Vega 11, which is the way they come up with the naming scheme for them. But the Vega 7 graphics runs quite a bit higher megahertz than what the Vega 11 graphics do. I think that's what really makes the difference in there. And also the speed of that RAM, I think it also makes a big difference. But again, if you're getting the 2400G with the big B450M motherboard, 3200 megahertz is probably what you would be running as your RAM speed, which I explained why I did it the way I did it earlier in the video. So by looking at these numbers I came up with, and there was a couple of underliers, you know, some of them 1/10% lows and whatnot looked a little strange to me, but I reran the test and I ended up with the same results. So I can't explain why them's such an underlier, but it does happen when you're running benchmarks. It looks like to me that they're Vega 7 graphics, which I kind of hit the 5600G pretty hard when I first got it, and I ran my benchmarks on it because they was running Vega graphics instead of running the newer architecture for integrated graphics. It does seem like they have improved them over the last 3 years. You can get better performance out of the Vega 7 than you can out of the Vega 11. So make sure you go down there underneath the video and you do all that fun YouTube stuff and all that good happy stuff. And you have a good day, and I'll see you in the next video or live stream.